Hello everyone and welcome to your second GL lesson. My name is Luke Lloyd and I am your Teach It Right tutor today. Today we're going to be covering non-verbal reasoning. You should be, if you're attending this lesson, in Year 5, studying Block 5, Lesson 2 and doing the GL course. Today we're going to cover non-verbal reasoning and I'm now just going to flash up the lesson plan so we can see what we're in for. So we're going to go through the Spansros mnemonic. What do we use it for? Can we remember it? We'll have a quick test in a moment. And then after going through the Spansros, we're going to see if we can apply it to three separate things: analogies, matrices, and sequences. And these are all styles of question. We're going to do a quick example where I talk through what I expect to see, how I would expect you, the children, to go about approaching it, and any other hints and tips I can think of. Right, let's get started with a quick spot test. So, Spansros. What is it and why? Children, the first thing I'd like you all to do, please, is get out a jotter and a pencil. List down your Spansros down the side. Give yourself ample space. It can be nice and big. And I want you please to tell me what word follows the S, the P, the A, the N, the S of our acronym. If you've mixed up the order that I give the answer at the moment, I won't mind. But as long as, for example, with the S's, you've got 4 separate words, you know you're on the right track. We really think it's really important that you've learnt this by now or are making great efforts to learn this and memorise this because it's so useful. We'll come on to that when we talk about the why Spansros in a second. So useful for tackling these questions. So, children, I suggest you pause the video here. Give yourself about 2 minutes, please, to get as far as you can. And we'll mark the score at the end out of 9. Right. Pause the video. And hopefully, welcome back. I'm now going to start going through the answers. So if you've not paused it, quickly pause it now. If you've not finished, hopefully you have. Let's run through the answers. So the first of my S's is shape. Has the shape changed? Was it a rectangle? Is it now a pentagon? Has the shape moved? Has the shape? It's so important. Lots of shapes in our non-verbal reasoning, something they very commonly use. P stands for position. Was there a shaded circle in the top left and now it's in the top right and then it's in the bottom right? They're always moving the positions of things. So if you're ever tracking something moving, that's P for position. A is for angle. Has something gotten larger, smaller? Has the angle inside rotated? All really important things to look at. N, as a maths teacher, N is my favourite. N stands for number. You should always, especially if you're stuck on a question, the most common one I often see is that it's the numbers. You've not counted the sides. You've not counted the amount of shading. You've not counted the number of lines. Counting things is often what they use as the tougher questions. So number, I think, is a really important one. Another S, size. Has it gotten smaller? Has it gotten bigger? Has the size changed? S is shading. Again, shading, it comes back later. It's really important for one of these, and I'll talk about it in a moment. But was it hashed? Was it, for example, the lines going this way, now the lines are going this way? Have they then changed to a hash pattern? Another one with shading, have they gone for dotted? That's often the way we can do it. Now whether they're changing the lines or the shading, it's very similar. R, very nice and easy, stands for rotation. So has the shape been rotated, twisted round? O, and this O one really ties into the shading quite nicely, is the shape overlapping? So for example, if I've got myself a white circle and behind it I've got a shaded in circle, and then suddenly I've now got my white circle, but actually the shaded in circle, the coloured in circle, is on top. Being able to see that, for example, if I colour this one in the same way, hopefully you can see that it's actually the overlap that's now changed. What was in front is now behind. Overlap's another one, a bit like number, that can be quite a difficult one to spot. Final S, often left till last, symmetry. Important not to get symmetry confused with rotation. Symmetry is where, for example, you have, I don't know, let's do a right angle shape. And this is my mirror line that's been reflected. And now these are symmetrical. This is my line of symmetry. And that can often be a reflection that we see in our answers. Right, why Spansros? Well, this list is worth going through simply because sometimes we're looking at a question, we're not sure the answer, and this gives us things to target. And also, one thing I think is really important, a lot of people don't do, is they try and handle multiple of these at the same time. And that's fine, but then it can be quite easy to forget something, especially if you're sort of spending, 10, 15 seconds, it's not jumped out to you straight away what the answer is. The best way, identify one of these things that either changes or holds true, one of these variables that is varying, that is changing, and then go through and do your elimination based off just that one. So you almost want to tick them off one at a time until you found the answer. Now, obviously, if you find the answer after the first couple, that's good. Don't then go back and check the others, because we don't have time for that. And time is obviously of utmost importance, as we'll see, because all of these upcoming activities are going to be timed. So why Spantros? Because it gives us something to do when we're stuck, but also it gives us distinct things to think about one at a time, so we're not forgetting, so we're not missing things. So give yourself a score out of 9, and if you got 9 out of 9, very well done. If you got 8 out of 9, I'll say good job. Anything less than that, and please really add this to your list so for next week you've got this memorised, because I think we might come back and test this next week as well. Right, let's jump into the first main activity. So this is analogies. We're going to go through an example in just a moment. Before we do, I'm just going to highlight this. 5 minutes, 10 questions. Whenever you should see that, you really need to be at the stage right now where we're working out exactly how long that means we have per question. I say exactly, you should certainly have a good estimate. So if there's 5 minutes for 10 questions, can you work out for me how long you're going to have on each question? What's the maximum you can really spend on each question? You can pause the video if you need a little bit of time. I don't really want you to sit down with a pen and paper and work this out in the exam, because that's like adding an 11th question, but you should be able to have a rough estimate. The way I'd work out is I've got 5 minutes, so I've got 5 lots of 60, which means I've got 300 seconds. And then I know if I've got 300 seconds for 10 questions, that's going to be 300 divided by 10. And that means I know that I've been left with 30 seconds. Now, again, I wouldn't want you to do this working in the exam, but in your head, rough estimate, whenever anyone says, you should always be able to tell roughly how long you've got per activity. And parents, if you can test this, I think it's a really useful skill if your child's able to accurately say, oh no, I can only spend a minute on this question, I can only spend 10 seconds on this question. It means they're not going to get caught up. Right, let's jump into the first example. So here is an example of an analogy. I will read it out because it's a lovely description. There are 2 figures on the left with an arrow between them. You have to decide how the second figure, this figure, is related to the first. So what's changed? And this is where you might go through your Spantros and think, okay, well, what's happened? There will then be a third figure after the colon, and one of these answers will be related in the same way as these two. So whatever the change is from here to here will be the same change as this shape to one of my answers. The way I want you to go about this, children, first off, look through, see if we can work out what's changed. I think there's an obvious S that's jumping out to me, and that is the fact that the size has gotten bigger. So I'm now looking for a shape where it starts small and gets larger. Right then and there, I can go through, look at my answers, and I can eliminate a few of them. So definitely not A, because A is not getting any bigger. They've changed the shading. I don't think C is appropriate either, because although they've not really made the shape bigger, they've just doubled the number of them. And actually, same for B. Although the whole outside is bigger, it's made up of 4 of these, and that's not what's happening. It's not like my big triangle is made up of 4 little ones. So I don't believe it's B either. Now I can look at the last 2 and you can probably tell the answer because it's been circled, but instead of this process I would possibly go back and just think, okay, well, what else has changed? We said that the shape, the size has changed, but also actually if you look, here's my line of symmetry. It's been enlarged, but it's also been reflected. Again, because this is now a shape with lines of symmetry or directions, it doesn't really help me, so I have to think, but look here, this rectangle, it's not symmetrical all the way around, so it can't be that one, which means my answer is D. And again, I've nicely eliminated, so I'm really certain of my answer, which is what we want. Right, children, you notice there's a timer in the right-hand side. This is how long I would like you to spend on this activity. Do pause it. If you don't get to the end of the activity, what I suggest, especially since you can now pause this video at any time, is let's say you had questions 1, 2, 3, 4, and you were doing a timer and you only got to question 3. I would draw a line under question 3 and just write a T for time up. Then I would still go back and finish. But the reason I want you to be under timed conditions now is because your exam you're going to be sitting will be timed, and it's really important you're practicing to speed. Because with all the time in the world, we can handle most questions. But actually, unfortunately, in the real exam, we're going to be timed. So we need to be judging how long we are. And if you get right to the bottom, and that's where time's up, fantastic. If the T's down there, give yourself a smiley face as well, because you're exactly where you need to be. But if not, if let's say you're only here when your time's up, well, then you know that you need to work on pace just as much as you do being accurate and being precise. So do a little mark with whichever question you get up to when the timer's up. If you don't have a phone or a watch on the wall, one thing you can do, since I know you're all sitting in a computer, and I'm just going to switch screens here, if you go to a website like YouTube, and hopefully you can see this, type into the top timer, and actually a load of options come up. So for example, just so I can show you, you might click this one. I recommend picking one that doesn't have sound, so I'm going to mute my sound down here, but you can actually have a timer that appears. I'll make sure it's not on times 2 speed, and here's a timer, and it will just tick its way through, and you can see it that way. So this is via the website YouTube. Right, let's put that away, stop the timer there, and go back to our lesson slides. So, Chrome. Ooh, here we are. So children, pause it here, give yourself 5 minutes, click time, I'll get mum and dad to help out with the timing, and we'll be back in just a second. Right children, welcome back. I'm going to continue on because hopefully that has been your time up. Now, just to explain what's going to happen, I'm going to then run through these answers and work them out with you. I'm actually going to work them out as if from fresh, so I'm going to show you my workings and show you how I'd have done them if I were in the exam. That means if you want the answers just very quickly, you might want to skip through. If you've seen the answers, then go back in more detail and look at the ones you weren't sure of and then go over the explanations. That's absolutely fine. Again, this video is for you to use as effectively as possible. But one thing that's really important for me is you're very honest with how you mark these, going through, marking the ones that you got correct with a nice big tick. Anything that you got wrong, marking really the correction, because that's the important thing as to what the one, so circle the correct answer that should have come up. If you've got a different coloured pen or pencil, that's allowed for this part, marking it so it really stands out. And then listening to my explanation of how the answer came about and making sure you understand. If not, please come and find us either in one of the live lessons or in one of the Q&As and ask for a more detailed explanation if it's not making sense there and the answers in the back of the book are not helping either. Similarly, you can use the answers found in the back of the book. That's absolutely fine. Again, as long as you're not just, the worst thing to do would be just copying down the answers without thinking about them. It's that process of thinking about the answers that's going to make this next part really valuable, because it means for the next time you do a question that's similar, well, you get it right, and that's what we're after. We want you guys getting to that, what's that 100% section. So I'm going to run through these answers. Also, you might want to do a score, and especially if you didn't finish the entire thing within the 5 minutes, what score did you get out of those that you would have done in the time, and then another score out of the ones you attempted. And perhaps maybe you got, I don't know, if there were 10 questions, you might have only attempted 7 of them, but you got 7 out of 7, and that's really good. But then you still need to know that because of the time constraints, well, I only got 7 out of the 10. So I'll let you have those 2 scores. So one, you know how accurate you're being, and the other, you know how quick you're being. That's something that's fine. Right, let's get on with it. So, question 1. The first thing, I'm looking at my 2 shapes between the analogy. What's happening? Well, the outside of my box is going from dark to white, and then also the inside of my shape, my colour, my shading is going from white to black. So, going based off that analogy, I'm expecting my inside that's white become black. Well, that means I can immediately eliminate D. I then maybe need to have a think about the shape. It's not changing, so it's the same number of sides. Run through, yep, these are all 6-sided shapes, can't get rid of that. But there's definitely something distinct with the shading or with the lines around the outside. So these 2 lines are just becoming thin, and the ones on the top are becoming dotted. So let's see, well, A, no sign of dotted lines, so I can get rid of A. B, entirely dotted, I'm not sure I like that. Now between C and E, definitely, if you look, these ones here are dotted lines, whereas the ones in the example are dashed. So that means I think not E, has to be C. Well done if you got it. Right, on to question 2. So, looking at the shape, what can I see? Well, I can see a line of symmetry down the centre here. These 2 have been reflected onto one another. I can also see that the shading is staying the same, the overlapping is staying the same, but I think it's worth pointing out that these lines that are diagonal are also being reflected, so the entire shape is being reflected. Right, let's go and see if I can apply that rule then, this symmetry, to the next shape. So, I'm just going to give myself some highlights. This C shape is being reflected, so I'm then going to expect it to look like this if I put my line of symmetry in. Which means I want possibly A could be an option, but B couldn't, it's going in the wrong direction. C couldn't go in the wrong direction, D, there's that C shape, and E, there's that C shape. So it could A, D, or E. The next thing we consider, we've got here these horizontal lines, which tells me right away, suddenly, can't have swapped to A. That's not the correct answer. So now I'm checking between D and E. I'm going to continue with this, just sketching what I expect to see. If I've got my shape here next to it, well, hopefully I can see that this curve within the shape that's going to be filled in as black should match as a curve. So I'm not quite sure what's happened to E down here, but it looks to me like it's been extended, whereas I think D is a much more accurate. So really I'm expecting it to look like this. So I think E is the incorrect one, because it's not a copy of this shape. Let me just rub out my little drawing so I can show you very, very clearly. It's this section here that's being reflected, and I think that's reflected perfectly onto D, which means D is my answer. Right, let's do one more. Let's look at question 3. So there's a couple of things to consider. First off, it's obviously shading, but also another line of symmetry. So I'm going to do my line of symmetry first, because that's easy to see that it goes up like an arrowhead. So here I've got one shape on top. If I draw myself a little sketch, that means it's going to be rotated round, so it's going the other way on top, and then this going reflected looks like that. So by drawing myself a little sketch, I now know what I'm looking for. So yep, A matches, B matches, C matches, but D does not. Now I have to go back and think about the shading, so I'm going to swap colour on this. What's changing? Well, the top one has gone from black to white. The bottom one has gone from white to hashed. So let's see. Are we going to have white up here getting turned into hashed? And what kind of hashed? Well, this is going downwards. It's vertical. So I'm expecting this white one to also be vertical. So that means I can eliminate B because it's horizontal. Could be A. Let's just check. Well, hang on. The black became white. This white can't become white, so not C. And also, if you look on this one, D we've already eliminated. And E, it's not going from black to white. It's going from white to hash, so not E either. Well, that means I'm left with A. I am just going to check, since it's the last question, I want to make sure everyone's super sure. If black turns to white, this black one should turn to white, and yes, what is now black has been reflected to white. So the answer is A. Whew! Well done, you got 3 out of 3. Let's move on. Right, so we're moving on to the next question, question 4. What can we see? Well, obvious one jumps out to me. Thin line going to thick line. So let's see, thin line. Unfortunately, all thick lines, so it's not that. Let's try again. What else can I see? What else is standing out to me? So I'm going to run through my spans Ross. Certainly no shading. Well, what can I spot here? I have one line of symmetry in this shape, which is a trapezium. And I'm going to my rhombus that has 2 lines of symmetry. So, how many lines of symmetry I got in there? I'm going to swap colour to red. Got 2 lines of symmetry. So following the same pattern, that should leave me with 3 lines of symmetry. Circle, no. Which means I think it has to be my triangle. With the triangle, if you're ever trying to draw the line of symmetry, I recommend take a point and go down. Take a point and go to the line, centre of the line. Take a point, go to the centre of the line. And that kind of gives you, if you then extend them out, the 3 lines of symmetry for an equilateral triangle. So I think my answer is in this one, E. Now notice this one, I haven't really used the elimination as such. I'm just trying to find the one that matches. And again, that's fine, as long as you've thought it through and it makes sense. You don't have to then go back and cross these out. If you found the answer and you're confident, fine, move on. You can always, if you finish early, the entire thing, you do have time left, then you can go back and start not just crossing them out, but thinking, oh, why wasn't it A, why wasn't it B? But that's not something I'm going to do now until I finish the whole set of questions, because as we know, we've only got 5 minutes to do this whole set of questions. Right, question 5. I'm going to have a look. We've got 2 stars and 1 circle becoming 2 triangles and 1 square. So the number of stars is becoming triangles. So I've got 2 stars here, so I'm looking for 2 triangles. So not A, could be B, not C, could be D, could be E. Then 1 circle matched with 1 square, so 2 circles, 2 squares. We can't be that one, can't be B, could be D, could be E. What else can I see? Well, we've got 3 shapes in total, and that leaves us with 3 swirls, 3 loops in our line. And on this one, 4 shapes in total. So I'm going to ask that 4 of mine. Let's just see. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So right away, I'm going to think D. Something else that could have been the decider is the shapes that are on the outside, but actually we found our answer. So I'm just going to stop there. That means question 6 is next. What can I see in question 6? Let's just start counting things. Well, we've got 1 dot and 1 line becoming 2 dots and 2 lines. So if the dots and lines don't match, I could eliminate that one. Sadly, they all match. But actually, hang on, look at this. E. This definitely doesn't look right. Nothing is becoming separate. So I definitely don't like E because it's jumping off the bottom of my line. So I'm going to get rid of that straight away. What else can we do? We've got 2 arrowheads and 2 flat lines here. And also, wherever the multiple arrowheads are is where my black one is matching to. So I'm expecting my multiple arrowheads, the black one to be pointing down. So that means D, I don't think is correct for me. Also, C is jumping out. There's definitely something wrong here. The shading, there's no indication in my question that there's any reason for the shading to change. So the fact that that's now white, I don't like it. Let me see, what else can I just sketch what I'm expecting? Well, it's going to be pointing in this direction, so there's going to be a line going that way. We already know there has to be 2 lines at least, which means there should be at least 2 dots, so I can put the 2 dots in. My arrowhead should be facing downwards and coloured in, so I'll just sketch that in there. And then how many lines are there going to be? Well, I think 2 arrowheads, 2 lines. 3 arrowheads, 3 lines. So this is what I'm expecting it to look like, which is A, right there. So, not the best sketch in the world, but again, the sketching, the purpose of that, guys, if you're doing this, is just to get you the answers. So actually, you wouldn't have needed to finish. As soon as you've used your sketching, you're halfway through, brilliant. Oh, A is my answer. I can make a go of it. Right, let's turn the page and have a look at question 7. Right, here we are faced with number 7. So, what's happening? Well, we've got our external shape, and it's being broken up into many shapes, but it's also being rotated. So actually, I think I'm going to stop there and just say, first off, rotation. So the arrow, if I think of this as an arrow, it's pointing down, it's now pointing up. So I'm looking for a trapezium with the small side on the bottom. So it could be A, can't be B, can't be C, could be D, could be E. Already got into 2 already, worth doing. But notice, the shape that's being split up to is the same in the centre as the shape. So I want to make sure it's the same, and also that the lines aren't changing. So looking at A, I'm not sure I'm convinced by the fact that we're suddenly getting the shading changes, so not A. Right, let's look at my last 2 options. I've got one split into triangles and one split into a combination of shapes. Well, there's no indication here. Now, if it was somehow split up into trapezia, I might think, but at these, no, that's a rectangle, there's some squares in there. I've not been convinced by E. I think the fact that whatever is in the interior of the shape has been split up into triangles, I think that means, for me, D is my convincing one, because it's been rotated and the inside has been filled with triangles, whereas this, there's no indication that they can fill it with just random shapes, so not E. Right, let's go on to number 8. Well, again, we've got a rotation. What's going from horizontal is now vertical, which means my vertical is going to be horizontal. Sadly, I can't eliminate any for spotting that. We have to think again. What else is changing? Well, I've got my diagonal shading here that's becoming diagonal shading here. So does that give me an indication as to what way it's rotating? Well, yeah. If I rotate it 90 degrees this way, that would leave that in the same location. And also, actually, let me just think. The one that's on top then, this cross-hatching, is becoming dots. So, can I then apply the same one? Cross-hatching, rotate it the same way. So if I'm spinning around this way, spinning around again, the cross-hatching, not the cross-hatching, the shading should be on the right-hand side. So, and it should be, if I'm rotating it properly, instead of being this type of horizontal going to this type, it's going to be the same pattern. So this one, I'm looking for this shape. So I like A, but I don't like B. Look, because it's not diagonal, it's not the same direction. So I'm going to get rid of B. I don't like C because shouldn't be having cross-hatching and polka dot. It's the cross-hatching that becomes the polka dot. This one here, is there any indication as to why it's going to be a half shape? No, I don't think so. We've not been indicated that there's no clue that it should be divided in 2 or half a square. So now we're just looking between A and E, and really it's the side that it's on. And again, I think because we're rotating 90 degrees to get this shape in the same location, this one rotated 90 degrees would mean you'd have your diagonal lines on the right hand side. So I don't think it's E either, so I'm going to go with A. Right, now we can look at question number 9. Now on this one, what can we see? Well, we've got 4 quarters and it's being split into 8/8. So I'm going to want to see in all my circles, yep, being split into 8 segments, which is what's happening to all of them. And then what's happening to the pattern? Well, currently we've got white, then we've got shaded, white, black. But then in our final product, the white sections are disappearing. So we're then alternating between the black and the shaded, the black and the shaded. So let's see if we can apply that to our next one. We want it to be 8 segments, but then we're ignoring the whites. So what that means, it's going to look like a circle with 8 segments. But then all those segments alternate between dotted and dotted, which means actually the whole thing is going to be covered in dotted segments. So I just got to go over that again because I think it's worth noting. If we get rid of our white sections, if we ignore them, the only 2 sections that are left are this dotted one here and this dotted one here. And if we alternate between the 2 of them, well, we just get dotted the whole way round. So if you look in this one, it's going black, then the fan, black, then the fan, black, then the fan shape. In this case, it's just dotted, 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 dotted. So the answer is E. Quite a good one, that. Interesting. Right, question number 10. Let's have a look. What can we see? Well, we've got the shape is being not reflected. If we look, and I always like to try and find one feature that sticks out. I've got my little mouth shape here, pointing upwards, and it's now rotating downwards. That tells me my outside shape has not been reflected, but rotated round. And it's been rotated round by 90 degrees, 180 degrees. So we've rotated it 180 degrees. That's the outside shape. Now let's see what's going on inside. We've got a circle, a dot, and a star becoming 3 circles. So what's that going to mean for that? Well, we've got 3 shapes and 3 shapes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 should become 5. So already I can see that my 4 shapes in A is not good enough. Nor is the 3 in C. And although D has got 4 shapes, we see that everything is becoming these hollow circles. So D is not the answer either. Now, we have to start thinking about our rotation. So what I'm going to want, again, let's pick a feature. I'm going to pick this flat bit here, this sort of, I want to think of it as a cup shape. And if I'm rotating it to face the other direction, it should be like this. So let's see, does B match? Well, it does. But E certainly doesn't. In fact, the outside of E has changed. If I was to highlight it, that is very clearly not the same shape rotated around. So again, I'm going to get rid of E, which tells me that I think for question 10, the final answer is B. So quite a difficult one, but again, once you've eliminated a few just by counting, for example, it actually came a 50-50 and not too difficult. Right guys, that leads us to the end of this section. Please can you tot up your scores? Again, if for example, I'll show you what I mean. Let's say for purposes you got to here, so you did a little thing and you just wrote T for time, or you wrote down time. You could work yourself out 2 scores. I'd work out a score at the bottom. So I got 10 out of 10 in this case, because if I got to the bottom. But imagine, let's say you got to here in your time, you might say you got 8 out of 10. Because with the time limit included, you didn't quite make it to the end. And that's what I mean about being aware of the time. And again, if you've done this and you've got them all correct, but you didn't quite finish time, really well done. It means you're being consistent, which is fantastic. You just have to start being a bit more conscious about your speed. So things you can start doing might, for example, star a question, leaving it and coming back. I noticed that question 8 probably took the longest time for me. I took a little while to think of that. So if I'm in my exam, I might have starred 8, left it, quickly got 9 and 10 done, and then come back and spent whatever time was remaining on question 8. That's quite a useful skill in terms of prioritising the easy marks first. Right, let's move on. We've got the next section coming up. Test 2 in the same book. So that's your Let's Non-Verbal Reasoning book. Things that have changed for this: 6 minutes, 12 questions. So I'd love it if everyone right now, if you pause the video if you have to, or if not, I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. If it's 6 minutes, do 12 questions. How long? Maybe jot it down and cover the answer. You can show mum and dad you've got it before I give it to you. What is it? Well, if you've got 6 minutes and then twice as many questions to do in that time, it means you can only have half a minute per question. So the answer is 30 seconds. And that means we come onto our activity test 2. Just make sure you check that it matches. I'm going to change my notes. Say I've got 6 minutes of this activity. So just so you know, top right hand side. So you can see up here, that's where you end up having. Oh, where's it gone? There it is. That's where you end up seeing the time allotted, right in the top corner. For matrices, what are matrices? Well, they're the classic grid style question with the grid style question, as well as just considering one of your span-cross properties at a time. Also, I recommend just taking one direction. So decide, right, I'm going to compare left to right. What happens in this case? The line goes from thin to thick, apply the same rule, thin to thick, draw it in, or in this case, right away, obviously. My answer is B, I agree. But if you start trying to do multiple angles, multiple times, you're doing horizontals, verticals, and as well as mixing it between multiple properties from your span-cross, you're going to lose track of them. You're going to get lost in it and you're not going to focus. So I recommend focusing on one direction and questioning one property. And once you then notice that rule and apply it. I've also given away the other tip, which is, of course, use this empty space to sketch what you expect to see. If more than one thing is changing, being able to note down what one of the changes you've spotted will mean it's much easier then A, to eliminate to get the correct answer, but also then to put the final composite picture of these multiple things. So if the size was changing, the position of something was changing, and the rotation was changing, I might just sketch out the position of the new shape, sketch out the direction of the rotation, and that means when I figured out my final variable, it's much easier to put that together and come up to an answer. Right guys, you've got 6 minutes. Again, get your timers ready. Pause the video please for 6 minutes, and when you come back to us, we'll be ready to go. So off you go. Right everyone, welcome back. So let's start going through the questions. I hope the test went well, and just a reminder, I hope you put a time as to where you got up to. And of course, fantastically well done if you managed to get through all the 12 questions in the 6 minutes, but if not, just make a mark so you know where you get up to, so you know what you're aiming for. Part of being able to improve is knowing what hurdle you have to overcome. So let's compare, going from left to right first. Well, the interior line is becoming solid, that's what this is here, and then these fronds, these lines are losing their little blobs on the end. Then if we compare going down, this top shape is rotating left. So I'm certainly expecting something in this direction, and I'm expecting sort of a solid rectangle. So that means not C. And certainly not E as well, because it's still got the blobs there. Not B, because it's still got the blobs, and we can see we've lost them. Between A and D, A is just a copy of that that's been rotated, but there's a little bit more. I don't know if you can see that these fronds, they're curling ever so slightly. So I think it's going to be D, because all we're doing is we're losing the blob. We're not straightening out the lines. So that means my answer is D. Right, next question, number 2. Slightly larger matrices here. It's a 3x3 or a 9 square matrices. Let's start doing the same process. So I'm going to look left to right first off. What's happening? Well, always I've got my large rectangle which is shaded, and that is rotating around. So it's starting on the top, then it's facing right, then it's facing down. So as we go from left to right, things are rotating. Let's just see if we've got a similar pattern on this large one down here. Yes, we do. See, it's on the right hand side first, then the bottom, then the left, which means this pattern will be the same for this large block, this large rectangle here. So let's think, if it's rotating, and we agree that it's rotating clockwise, 90 degrees clockwise each time, if it went from here and ended up here, it would mean I have to have this large block up top. And again, that's going to have these lines going in that direction. It's quite hard to draw. What about what's changing with my other smaller rectangle? Let's see. Again, if we just go from left to right, can I see a pattern? Well, I've got a solid black, solid black, solid black. I've got, so that's 3 of them. So 1, 2, 3. I've got dotted line, dotted line, dotted line, 3 of them. So I can already tell my little curly, wavy line is what's missing. But I do have to think to myself, which direction should the wavy line be facing? Because actually, if I start now eliminating, well, that could be work. Not that one. The big rectangle's in the wrong. That big rectangle's in the wrong place. And that big rectangle's in the place. I just have to think, which way should my line be? Like this or like this? That might have something to do with its rotation. And let me think. Well, these are all facing towards the shape. These are both facing towards the shape. So I think this is my correct answer. Because my little U's, my little cups, are all pointing inwards towards the shapes in all the examples, which means it's not A, the answer is E. Tough question, that number 2. Let's just move on. Right, let's go through questions 3, 4 and 5. Looking at the first one, what have we got here? Well, first row, not too sure. Second row for me really makes it jump out, that's why it's worth looking. If I've got this shape here, and I combine it with this, that is where my Y is coming from. So this is one of those classic examples where it's the first row combined with the second row to equal the third row. So it's this column plus this column to equal that. Now using that information, it means, well, I've got my T shape, so I still need to have my little shepherd's crook shape down there, and then I need these 2 pillars next to each other. So let's draw them. And again, luckily for the sketch, it's only for my use. So that tells me not A, because the crook's the wrong way around. Definitely not D. Now, I hope in your books that you're looking and not just copying off my examples, because you can see the shading in your books means that B is very clearly the one that has a combination of the two types of shading. And that's quite important, because obviously on here they do look a little similar. So the reason it's not C nor E is because the shading is incorrect. On E we've got this little box up the top of further shading. Don't know where that comes from. And on C, I can clearly see as well that the shading is not the correct colour. And that where this colour is coming from is I'm using the same colour as the midden row. So really I should have drawn these shaded in the same colour as the entirety of the middle row. And the reason this outside ones here, the reason these are grey, is because of course a mixture of white and black leads to the lighter grey. So the answer is B. Number 4. Nice small one. Well, we're definitely gaining these two dots on the end, but also those are not the same thing. They've been rotated 45 degrees, and they've been rotated 45 degrees anti-clockwise. So I write that as minus 45 degrees to indicate it's going backwards. So let's apply that same rule now, and of course I'm comparing left to right to this one here. Well, going in reverse, I'll have lost my dots, so I don't want any that have still got their dots on them. And if I'm going backwards, instead of rotating 45 degrees, I've got to think, what would it look like before? And I think in my little sketch, it should have looked like this, where this one's come up, so that's there. And I've got my two dots here, and the triangle like this. Now, after I've completed my sketch, it should be quite easy to see. Not quite. C is the one. So the correct answer to question 4 is C. Right, looking at question 5, I'm just going to see, right, bottom left, top right, bottom left, top left, top right. So again, we're rotating. Sometimes on these, I like to just draw an extra arrow just to make it really clear so I can see exactly what's happening. So as we go from left to right, the line is changing corner, it's changing position, or it's been rotated round by 90 degrees in this case. So if I apply the same rule, so we're currently top left, the next one will be top right. So let's see which one matches that. The answer is B. Nice and simple. For question 6 and question 7, let's do 6 first. Again, I'm going to start looking left to right. It seems like a good way to do it. Arrows are all pointing in the right direction. Arrows are all pointing in the bottom left direction of the next row. So again, I'm expecting all my arrows to be pointing in this direction. So that means I can get rid of A. Now let's see, any other patterns that I can spot? Well, I'm already drawn to the fact that if I look diagonally, I have the same type of arrow. Let's see if that rule applies. This diagonal, yep, same arrow applies. This diagonal I can't tell, but this one I can. So I'm already quite convinced that in terms of direction, I'm looking for one that's going to point to the top right, and I want it to be a thick arrow. So actually, I've jumped straight to it, which means my answer is E. For question 7, small box again, there's a few things going on here. So let's start going. I'm going to look left to right first. Well, there's not too much I can see in terms of link. Possibly these two lines, following these two lines. So possibly I'm expecting these two sort of humpty bumps to be done in the middle. So let me just sketch that in if that's what I think I've spotted. If I look from top to bottom, I've got two circles, two arrows, two triangles. My arrow is pointing one direction, it's now pointing the opposite, so perhaps I'm expecting this arrow to be in the opposite direction. Also, changing from left to right, we've gone from not filled in arrowhead to a filled in arrowhead, so perhaps my arrowhead's going to be filled in. And is there any clue? In this one it's got 3 lines. This one had no lines, this one had no lines, so perhaps all of these are going to have 3 lines as well. So I'm expecting 1, 2, 3 lines there. Now let's just take a moment to actually look at my pictures and see what information it's given us. Well, yes, I'm happy with, well, I don't want C, I don't want E, just because of the lines that match. Also, 3 lines, 3 lines, 3 lines, 3 lines, 3 lines, 3 lines. Nope, can't get rid of, well, we can get rid of D, I think, because there's not the 3 lines there. So we can get rid of D. And suddenly it comes down to 50-50. How are we deciding how many lines are in our circle? Is it to do with the number of lines here? So there's 2 and 2. Well, if that's the case, there would be 2 and 2. I'm not sure. Perhaps the number of lines on the circle match the number of shapes. It can't be 3 because of course there's one, if there's only one, or there's none on that side and 3 there, so it can't only do with the 3. The only other figure I can count is the fact that there are 2 shapes or 2 lines, so I think my answer has to be the one with 2 circles around it, B. Good question. Right, so next set of questions, 8, 9 and 10. Let's have a look at question 8. What have we got going on? Well, we have got triangle, circle, becoming triangle, circle. So the difference between the left row and the right row is their swapping position. So that means my heart is going to do on the outside. I'm not drawing the star very well, but with my star on the inside. What about the colours? Well, it's the same shading as before. I can't draw this as such, but I can realise that the large shape should have the black and the inside should have the white. So A is the wrong way round. Now, if I look at the others, although E and C are stars, they're not the same shape of star. They've got 4 corners versus what I'm saying is 5. And if I just take a moment to look and I compare the sizes, for example, this circle should match the size of this. This pentagon should match the size of this. So I'm looking for one that's the same size as this star. That B star is too small, so the answer to 8 is D. Right, number 9. Let's see what's going on here then. Right, comparing from left to right to start with. I've got arrows that are on the left and arrows on the top. So I think my 2 arrows are being rotated round. So if I apply the same rule, they're on the right hand side, it's rotating 90 degrees this way. So 90 degrees means my arrows are along the bottom. But let me just check my arrow heads here, so that's pointing left. The top one, if it was just rotating, would be facing that way, but it's not. So not only is it rotating, but it looks like the heads of the arrows are swapping. So if I rotated it round, instead of being pointing to the left, it's now going to point to the right on the top and the left on the bottom. What else can I see is happening? Well, this shape is sort of combining to form the black one. So it's some composite of these two. So maybe I'll just put that to the side for now. Side where it goes later. So it's sort of some combination, some overlap, and it should be shaded in black. Or shaded in at the very least. What else can I notice? Anything going from top to bottom? Not so sure. Well, one thing I have noticed is this black dot here is no longer black and becoming white, and then with a line connecting to it. Now what side is it going to be on? If it's rotating around, so this one's rotating around, so it's going to be over here somewhere. So a white dot like that, and presumably connecting to it. If I then sketch in this over the top, I'm not quite sure where, but let's just put it in like this. My little cup thing. Right, let's see if we can start eliminating things. So looking at A, what's different about this? Well, my white dot has got a hole. This one's filled in. I think that's wrong because only the left one should have the full dot. So I can get rid of A. Looking at B, what's different about B? The arrowhead. So they've not spotted with B that the arrows are the wrong way around. So not B. Could be C. Looks quite similar to my drawing. D and E, I have the same problem with both of them, that these arrows have not been rotated the correct direction. If these are going round clockwise, instead of being on this side, they should now be on this side. So I think we can go to D and E as well. Let's just do one last check. And yeah, you know what? My sketch does match C. So there you go. Right, let's have a think about number 10. So, going from top to bottom, I can see it's the same large shape. So it's that same shield shape. So am I expecting the same sort of pyramid structure going up? I think I am. Not the best, but it will do. What about the shading? Well, left to right, the shading seems to match. So I've got this shading going across here. So I'm expecting all white. Still haven't got anything. What else? Well, from top to bottom, the shading is the same. So whatever shape I've got, in whichever side it is. Well, actually, if I can tell, these are in the same sides. So I think this is going to be the same side. So I'm going to have my same shape up here. But how is it changing? Well, it's gone from a circle to a shield. So back up the top should probably be a circle, but shaded in. Let's see, do I have one? I do. C. And again, I might go back and eliminate these if I have time at the end, but until then I'm going to press on. Right, on to 11 and 12. So I'm going to start with these lines in the top hand side. So that is top right, then top left, then bottom left. So if I was to draw it, it's gone from here to here to here. So I can clearly see it's rotating around in this direction. So let's apply that same rule to the bottom. Let's just check. Top right. Oh, yeah, I've definitely spotted a pattern. Top right, top left, bottom left. So let's do the same rule. Top left, rotating around, bottom left. And actually, if I look now, there's only one shape that fits, because look, not on the not. Well, hopefully that was quick. I might just quickly do a bit of counting just to make sure. 6-sided shape, 7-sided shape, 8-sided shape, 3-sided shape, 5-sided shape. I know what's coming up. 4-sided shape, and partly it was the fact that I suspected it was this one, and that gave me the clue. So yeah, I'm expecting a square. And for those who are wondering, the dots: 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot, 3 dot, 2 dot, 1 dot. The only thing that's missing is the 1 dot. Let's fill that in. Right, number 11. That was nice and quick. It looked a bit scary, but just finding that one thing can actually then eliminate the whole raft of answers. Well done. Right, number 12. Let's just see what it's got going for us. So we have got a plus shape and a times shape. And if we look, this has been combined together, so you've got a plus and a times. We've got a square and a rhombus overlapped. So we're going to have these two triangles overlapping. How are we going to decide the shape and the shading? Well, we've always got one horizontal and one horizontal. So the shading is the same in each. How are we going to decide which one's the front? Well, let's check. That plus looks to be on top. The square looks to be on top, which means the first row has priority. So it's this arrow here that's going to be the darker arrow, the one that appears on top, and the second one to be lighter. So let's just run through. What could that then be? Because this is going to be filled in. A looks very promising to me. Not B, not C, not D, and not E. And because the 12th question is the last question, I do have the luxury to just go through and eliminate those last few questions. And again, I know I might go back through my test paper and check. Right, guys, really well done if you made it this far. Scores out of 12, please. And again, a score out of whatever you got to in terms of time. So if you got nearly to the end, 11 out of 12, you'd give yourself still a score out of 12. So that'd be 11 out of 12 in this case, if that's where you got up to. But brilliant. Good questions. We like matrices. But again, notice how elimination, especially that last couple, this number 11 was brilliant. It's a really good example of where spotting one pattern, even though there was a lot going on, you only needed to spot one thing, one bit of rotation, and actually it let you eliminate right the way down, all 4 answers to D. Keeping an eye out for those sort of things, and that just shows really why eliminating is so strong, so powerful, and can save you so much time. Right, I'm going to move on to the next section, which is going to be sequences. So again, this is going to be the same textbook, or the same Let's book I should have said, and actually, if you look, it's just test 3. So all I need you guys to do is turn the page for me, and we'll have a brief talk through of the example. Right, so test 3, 5 minutes, 10 questions. We've seen that before. We know that means it's 30 seconds per question. I have a feeling this is going to be quite a familiar thing for all these Let's questions. Sequences. In each question, there is a sequence of squares with one square left empty. Decide which one fits into the square. Again, because you've got a nice blank space, my first tip is to draw what you expect. In this case, I can see that my Spanseros size is definitely the factor that's deciding here. So I'm expecting it to be a really big shape, but everything else to be the same, which is B. But again, I want to see sketching in your books, in the empty spaces. This is one of the reasons why we use pencil, because you can rub things out. You see I rub things out occasionally with my little rubber here. You guys have pencils so that you're able to do the same. Other things with sequence, it's really important just to look at one of your Spanseros elements, one of your patterns, one of your variables that's changing at a time. If you try and do too many things at once, it's quite easy to lose out. And again, spot a pattern, sketch it in, and go from there. Right, guys, you've got 5 minutes now for your 10 questions. Please pause the video, and after your 5 minutes, come back and skim through the answers. Right, off you go. Really good luck. Right, so question 1. Well, I can very clearly see 2 things. One, the number of arrows. So we got 2, 3, 4, and 5. Unfortunately, yeah, all of our answers have 5. But we can still use that. What else about these arrows? They're pointing in this direction, the reverse, following reverse. So if I'm now to sketch in what I think is to see, I want to see 5 arrows going in this direction. 2, 3, 4, and 5. What else can I start to identify? Well, I've got circle, 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 so it's going empty circle, shaded circle, empty square, so I think the next case is shaded in square. And the reason I put it in this corner is that I can see that all my circles are in the same corner, so it makes sense to me that all the squares will be found in the same corner as well. So let's see if we can use that to eliminate some things. Right, well, B, first off, not a circle. All the rest match, but A, pointing in the wrong direction. C, D, and E, the things that I can see that are different between C and D are not only the arrowheads, in the type of arrowhead, but also where they start. So if I look, arrow top left, top left, top left, so they're the same. So since that first one's on the outside, I'm expecting my first one to be going up as well. And that means it can't be D. So now I'm just looking between C and E. And I think the correct answer, if I look very carefully, is that this C has got the thick arrowheads versus E has not. And consistently throughout, it's the thin arrowheads. So the correct answer is E, not C. Right, question 2. Looking at it, I've got a circle in the top left consistently. So right the way I can draw in my circle. And of course it's using that dotted pattern. What else? Well, this is where labeling, counting comes in often. 3 sides, 4 sides, 5 sides, 7 sides. That tells me I want a 6-sided shape. Now, in terms of the type of shape, of course, both C and A have 6 sides. But I think we definitely want regular shape. So it's a regular square, a regular triangle, a regular pentagon. And we're after D, the regular hexagon that's not got these straight lines, that isn't dotted. So number 2, the answer is D. Looking at question 3, we've got an increasing number of lines, and we've also got this interior swapping between horizontal and vertical. So the next one should be horizontal. It should have 2 dots on the end. We've got 1 line, 2 lines, 1, 2, 3 lines, 4 lines, and then 5. So again, 1, 2, 3. And just looking at the way that's filling in, we seem to always have a maximum of 2 on the bottom, and this extra line appearing on the top. And the last just feature to talk about is a square. So 1, 2, then somewhere, then 3, 4. So this dot is rotating around the outside like this. So I think it's going to be the square in the top right. So there's my sketch, not the best square I've ever drawn. Let's see if it applies. So 1, 2, 3 lines, but the square's in the wrong place. That B looks good to me. I'm going to preemptively do it. 4, 4. Yeah, bingo. Very quickly, what's the difference between B and D? It's just that vertical line. Good, yeah, I'm convinced. Right, number 4, looking at it again nice and closely. We have got a pentagon, and the pentagon has got an X in on the interior, a circle on the exterior, and this slightly more shaded in line than all the others. So I'm actually going to not look at this one so much, but look at this run of 3, because seeing a run of 3 in the row will help me spot the patterns, whereas having to do a jump, it can make it more confusing. So what's occurring? Well, we're going from square bottom to square top to square bottom. So I think this X, is flipping back and forth, or rotating, you could say 180 degrees. So I'm expecting to see it in the top hand side of my pentagon. Let me just draw the outside of a pentagon here. What about the side that's shaded in more heavily? Well, I've got a shaded one here, here, and here. So I can see that the shaded inside, or the thicker line of the pentagon, is rotating round, and it's moving over one space. So going in reverse, so this corner, this corner, this corner, I think it's going to be this top one that's slightly thicker here. That might be enough to answer it, but very quickly, what's happening with my circle? It's this corner, then this corner. So if I was to count from here to here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's moving 2 spaces each time. So going backwards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Circle on this side here. So that's my shape. Let's see which one matches. Oh, I think A is looking good, and all the rest aren't. Right, there you go. That's our answers to the first page. Following on, we've got 5, 6, and 7. So let's have a look at number 5. Well, we have got black square, white square, black square, white square, black square. So I think we've got the same interior pattern is repeating, and I'm expecting to see a black shaded interior square, which means already I can get rid of A and C, Now, what else do I need to do? Right, I've got 1 hump, 2 humps, 4 humps, 5, so I'm expecting 3. In terms of the side, it's going bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. So I want to see on the bottom hand side. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3. I've also got circle, triangle, something, triangle, circle. So I think it's going to be circle again. And so what we've just got here is a nice alternating pattern. And let's just run through the answers. So, can it be M? Sorry, can it be M? Can it be B? I think so. Can't be that because it's got too many. Can't be that because it's got too many. It's on the wrong side. So, yeah, the answer is B. Number 6. What's going on here? Well, we're looking in this space. So let's look at my run of 3 going in this direction. It's going to be top left, top entirely, top right. So what would be a combination between bottom left and top right? I think it's going to be everything. And then what will the shading be? Well, I've got horizontal, so going in this direction, then this direction, then this direction. So what I can see is, if I now look at my arrow, the arrow is rotating 45 degrees each time. So it's now going to be, instead of being vertically up, it's going to be 45 degrees around, making it diagonal. So now, based off that sketch, I can see that my answer is E. Right, number 7. Again, first one, I'm going to start looking at the next run. So we go white, horizontal, black, dotted. Then the white one has moved to the back. So if I look at the position, the white one is in 1, then 4, then 3, then 2. I don't know if you've seen this method of actually labelling the columns. What you can see is each of these, a bit like an escalator, is sort of moving backwards. So if we go 2, 3, 4, then back down to 1, the next one should be 2. So my white one should be sort of in the middle. Let's check the same pattern is happening. It's always, this this diagonal shading is always the one following white, so I know the next one should be horizontal. Say that again, diagonal. Then following that should always be black in every instance, unless it's looping back round again, it's black, so the next one should be black. So that one fully shaded in. Let's see if I can fill it in for us. Let's do red. Oh, no, it's not letting me fill in. I'll try again. And that means the last one is going to be the one that's on the left is this crosshatch. So it should go crosshatch white, diagonal black. So crosshatch white, diagonal black. Let's just make sure that crosshatch is not the same as this one. It isn't. So I think the correct answer is A. Right, really good. So last couple of questions, 8, 9 and 10. Let's see what's going on here. We've got 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then so I know 5 is coming up, we would think. So that means I'm going to go to A, B, C and D. Well, that was an easy one. Let's also just look to see if anything else, because I'm a bit suspicious if it's that easy. But we go white, black, and white. Yep, I'm convinced. E is the answer. We like it when it's a simple one. Question 9, we've got something to do with triangles. What direction? Well, it's pointing up, down, up, down. So this one needs to be pointing in the downward direction. We've always got 3. So the number of lines is going up. So 4, 3, 2, none. So I don't think there'll be any. And then if you look at the amount of shading that's happening, the amount of shading is increasing each time by 1 black square. So we got fully shaded, then we're down, lost 1, lost 2, lost 3, lost all 4. So I think in this case there's actually going to be no shading inside. And so actually, the correct answer is A. You can match it straight away. Right, number 10. We've got, I like this. So the arrow is pointing in this direction, then this direction, and this direction. So again, I can see from that pattern alone, my arrow is rotating each time. It's rotating 90 degrees. So following that on, I'm expecting my arrow to be in this direction. What else is changing? Well, looking at it, the arrows are changing each time. And so we're going from a fully shaded in arrow to a white arrow to 2 arrows, but then back to the fully shaded in. So I think following that pattern, I'm expecting this to be a white arrow. It goes black, white, 2, black, white. So this is that one. And then what about this strange dot? So we've got a dot just behind it, not one, moving further back, not one again. Well, I might just, based off what I've drawn, see if I can eliminate a few. So I don't like A, nor B, nor C. and actually then nor E. So already I can tell that we're onto something here without having to worry about what's going on with this little thing. What I think this one shows you is, I don't know about you, but I certainly found 8, 9 and 10 to be quite a lot easier than some of the earlier questions. And this again comes back to the point about picking those questions, really targeting the marks that are quick and easy. I mean, number 8, for example, I'd been very upset if I'd stopped at number 7 when 8 took me less than a couple of seconds to figure out. So going through, getting those easy marks is the most important thing. Right, that was out of 10. Again, write down a score, have a show off, because it's really obviously fantastic effort that you've put in terms of getting good marks. Again, if you got a score for time, you should really have. If you don't. By the way, if you've finished at times, let's say you only got to question 8 and you got 8 out of 8, for example, do still then go on, finish the last 2 questions, and then give yourself an updated score. So your time score might be 8 out of 10, but also your capability score, what we know you're capable of, will be out of the full 10. So although we're keeping an eye on time, don't think you have to stop, not go any further. I'd still like you to complete each of the exercises. Right, guys and girls, the last thing I just want to talk to you all about, really, is the homework. So this is the homework here. You should all have a copy. If not, you're more than welcome to access it on our student portal, which can be accessed via the Teach It Right website. And in fact, on YouTube, there is a video that you can access. It will just show you exactly how to get the homeworks. Click on the homework tab after logging in, and you'll be able to access a copy of the homework, but also you should have been posted one or given one earlier. And this is a copy as well. So in terms of the you must, it's these pages, again, mostly different tests from the non-verbal book. However, I would encourage everyone to access the you-coulds, because we know you're at home now. Unfortunately, there's not many places you can be going. Get those you-coulds done, and you'll see that they will be, I think, included in the answers. We look forward to giving you guys homework videos this time next week. So 1 week from now, much the same way that you've accessed this video, you'll be able to access the homework. Right, guys, thank you so much. Look forward to hearing from you all. Again, pop on down to the live version of this. I think the first live lesson for GL will be on Saturday, and we'll repeat it throughout the week. Right, guys, thank you so much. All the best.